Single dad helped the CEO find her missing daughter, but what he found wasn't just a child. The cracked phone lay in the grass, flickering weakly from a missed call that would never be returned. Beside it, a small lavender beanie soaked in dew. No footprints, no screams, not even a trail. Just silence and the eerie sense that a little girl had vanished without leaving a trace. "Where's Sophie?" Adrian's voice cracked like glass as the officer shook his head for the third time. "We've got every available unit searching the area. But the park doesn't have surveillance. No witnesses saw her leave." She stood motionless. Her face was unreadable, carved in stone, but her hands trembled, giving away the storm inside. The phone slipped from her fingers and shattered on the sidewalk. Her eyes remained fixed on the shadowy tree line beyond the iron fence, as if expecting Sophie to appear from the darkness barefoot and smiling. "This is my fault," she whispered. Cold, mechanical. "I shouldn't have let her go on that field trip. I should have known." "Ms. Blake," the officer interrupted gently. "I recommend you head back to the hotel. We'll continue the search through the night." Adrian didn't answer. She turned her heels, pressing softly into the wet grass. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. But something behind her eyes had cracked, and it would not heal easily. The luxury suite overlooked the glittering skyline, but Adrian felt none of its warmth. She sat on the edge of the bed, motionless, staring at a framed photo of Sophie. It was from their last vacation. Sophie's smile, radiant Adrian mid-email. "Were you ever really there with me?" "Mom?" she imagined Sophie asking. A knock at the door. Edward entered, her trusted advisor for over 15 years, his expression heavy. "I just spoke with the precinct captain." "No leads yet," he said softly. "Adrian, there's someone you should meet. Used to be a detective. Not anymore. But he's different." She looked up unimpressed. "The police haven't found a thing. What could some unemployed ex-cop possibly do? He wasn't fired. He left personal reasons. But he has instincts, Adrienne. The kind you can't teach." He handed her a crumpled address. "He won't take calls. You want his help? You show up. Early. He drives nights." The next day, Adrienne pulled up in her sleek black SUV engine, humming against the stillness of a quiet suburban street. In front of her was a small weathered garage, modest house, white paint flaking from the edges. As she stepped out, a little girl ran from the porch, ponytail bouncing a book, nearly swallowing her whole. "Uncle Graham, someone's here," she called, then turned to Adrian with a polite smile. "You must be." "Lily," she said brightly. "I'm homeschooled. Are you the mom of the girl who's missing?" Adrian froze. Before she could respond, a calm, steady voice came from inside Lily. "We don't talk to guests like that." The man appeared tall, lean, worn jeans and a faded shirt, eyes like deep water. He didn't look like a detective. He looked like someone who had lost something once and never quite let it go. "You must be Adrian Blake. And you're Graham Porter." "That's right. They say you used to be a cop. Not anymore." "Why?" "Because sometimes the truth needs a different road to be found." The answer caught her off guard. "I don't have time for riddles," she said sharply. "My daughter is missing. The police are out of leads. I need results." Graham studied her for a moment, then gestured for her to follow him. Around the back was a converted workspace, walls lined with maps, satellite photos, and faded files from cases long forgotten. "This is the last picture Sophie drew," she said, handing him a child's painting, a stone wall in a park with a small figure standing behind it alone. He stared at it quietly. Then, without looking up, he asked, "Do you see what's wrong?" "The wall." "No," he said. "The perspective." This wasn't drawn from Sophie's eyes. This was drawn from someone watching her. Sophie wasn't just drawing a place. She was trying to tell someone something. Adrian's breath caught. "She's being watched." "No," Graham said. "She feels misunderstood. Invisible. She's trying to show you how she feels. And that tells me something." He placed the picture gently on the desk. This wasn't a kidnapping, Miss Blake. Not by force. Adrian stepped back, shaken. You're saying she left on purpose? I'm saying it's a possibility. One we need to consider. For the first time, the steel in her voice cracked. No. She wouldn't do that. She couldn't. Graham looked at her, not with judgment, but with the quiet certainty of someone who had followed too many broken trails. If I help you, he said slowly, we won't just be searching for your daughter. We'll be searching for the reason she chose to leave her mother behind. The silence inside Graham's truck was heavy, not awkward, but weighty, like two people sharing the same storm from opposite ends of the sky. Adrian sat stiffly in the passenger seat, her hands clasped over her lap, eyes darting out the window as they passed through older neighborhoods where the houses looked tired but loved. She loved this place, Graham finally said. Sophie. The park. She came here often. Adrian's voice was clipped. It was just a class trip. I didn't choose the location. Graham nodded slowly, not looking at her. Did she seem nervous before going? I wouldn't know. I wasn't with her that morning. There it was, the pause. Not guilt, not exactly, but absence, like a mother trying to flip through a book she hadn't read in years, searching for the pages where she might have mattered. They pulled up to a modest elementary school. Graham stepped out and walked toward the front office. Adrian hesitated, then followed. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed over old bulletin boards and worn-out motivational posters. A security guard greeted Graham like an old friend, shaking his hand firmly. Still got that hunch of yours, he grinned. Still chasing ghosts, Graham replied. We're looking into a missing girl. Sophie Blake. She was here on a field trip. The guard frowned. Yeah, I remember the buzz. Little thing, real quiet. Sat alone at lunch. Adrian's expression tightened. She talked to anyone. Not much. Drew a lot in this sketch pad. Left it on the bench by the fountain. I gave it to one of the teachers. Graham raised an eyebrow. Do you remember which one? The guard tapped his chin. Miss Danny. Art teacher. Real soft-spoken. She's usually in room 12. They made their way down the hall, footsteps echoing. Room 12 smelled faintly of oil pastels and childhood dreams. A young teacher, maybe in her late 20s, looked up from her desk as they entered. Sophie Blake Graham began gently. You remember her? Danny's eyes softened. Of course, she was delicate. Like she carried more weight than her age allowed. She left behind a sketch pad. I still have it. Danny opened a drawer and pulled it out, handing it to Adrian. She hesitated before taking it, fingers trembling. Inside were pages of strange, beautiful sadness, a small figure on a swing, always alone. A window with bars drawn across. A smiling woman with no eyes. Adrian stared, breath caught. She never showed me these. Sometimes, Danny said softly, kids draw the things they can't say. Back in the truck, Adrienne clutched the sketch pad against her chest as if holding it tightly enough could bring Sophie back. Graham drove without speaking, letting the silence breathe between them. She's always been quiet, Adrienne murmured. Sensitive, but smart. So smart. I thought if I gave her everything I never had, private schools, tutor security. She didn't need a fortress, Graham said quietly. She needed a front porch. Adrienne looked at him sharply. You think this is my fault? I think this is bigger than fault, he replied. This is about connection, and it's not too late to build one. Her voice dropped. You don't know me. I know the look of someone who's afraid they've already lost. The truck slowed in front of a corner diner, its windows fogged slightly from the warmth inside. Graham parked. Hungry? He asked. I didn't come here for lunch. Neither did I. But I need coffee. And Lily's out of school soon. Your daughter. He nodded. Smart kid. Keeps me honest. Adrian hesitated, then followed him in. The diner was cozy, full of the hum of conversation and the clink of silverware. They slid into a booth by the window. She lives with you full time, Adrian asked, genuinely curious for the first time. Graham stirred his coffee. Her mom passed 4 years ago. Cancer. It was quick. I'm sorry. He shrugged. Grief isn't something you bury. It's something you carry. But Lily, she makes the load lighter. Adrian stared into her cup. I never really knew how to be soft. My father built Blake Industries from the ground up. He said emotions are liabilities. So I learned how to be sharp, how to cut before someone cuts you. Graham didn't interrupt. I thought success would give Sophie a better life, but I don't know if she ever felt safe with me. Graham leaned forward, voice low. Adrian, there's something you need to understand. Kids don't run because they want to leave you. They run because they want you to follow. Adrian blinked hard. A tremor ran through her chest. But what if I'm already too late? He shook his head. It's only too late if you stop walking. That night, back in his garage, Graham pinned a new photo onto his investigation board. A drawing from Sophie's sketchpad, a girl sitting by a fountain shadow looming behind her. Not threatening, just watching. Lily came in barefoot and sleepy, holding a book. Is this about the girl on the news? She asked. He nodded. Is her mom sad? Very. Are you helping? I'm trying. Lily looked at the sketch. She draws like me. I think she's scared, but not of monsters, just of not being seen. Graham crouched down, eye level with his daughter. Do you ever feel that way? Sometimes, she whispered. But you always notice, even when I don't talk. He pulled her close. Always Lily. Always. As he held her, his eyes wandered back to Sophie's sketch and the small figure in the corner of every page. Alone, but reaching. Always reaching. It was nearly midnight when Adrian stood outside, her sweet keycard in hand, staring at the door as if it might open to a different life. The hallway was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't comfort but accuses. Inside, she dropped her purse onto the table, kicked off her heels, and stood barefoot on the cold marble floor. She walked to the window. The city below pulsed like a machine, alive, relentless, and entirely indifferent. Sophie was out there, somewhere, a needle in a city of neon. And Adrienne, for all her billions and brilliance, felt like a mother with empty hands. She reached into her bag and pulled out Sophie's sketchpad again. This time she didn't flip through the pages quickly. She studied them, each one. In the margins, Sophie had scribbled tiny sentences. Not full thoughts, just fragments I wanted to tell you. Today, I didn't disappear. You just didn't see me. It's not that I'm quiet. It's that I'm loud inside and no one listens. Adrienne closed her eyes. When had she stopped listening? The next morning, Graham pulled up in front of her hotel in a dusty Chevy that looked like it belonged to a different century. Adrienne climbed in, clutching a thermos of coffee she hadn't touched. We need to find someone who's seen her, she said quietly. I agree. Graham nodded. But it won't be someone in a uniform. Kids who disappear, they don't always show up on the radar of people who file reports. They surface around those who've been forgotten themselves. Adrienne glanced over. You mean the homeless? I mean the unseen. They parked near an old underpass where the city had given up and the people had given in. Rows of makeshift tents lined the sidewalk. Fires flickered inside rusted barrels. Cardboard signs leaned against cracked concrete. Anything helps, just hungry. Please see me. Graham led the way, nodding respectfully to people he clearly knew by name. Porter, a bearded man, called out from behind a cart full of scrap metal. You still collecting ghosts? Trying to return one to her mother, he replied. The man studied Adrienne, her crisp coat, her sharp jawline, her expensive watch. She don't look like she lost a kid, he muttered. She looks like she lost control. Adrienne didn't flinch. I lost both. That shut him up. They found her near the far end of the underpass, an older woman wrapped in 3 coats and a knitted red scarf, her skin weathered like paper left in the rain. Her name was Marlene. She's the one, Graham whispered. She listens. Marlene looked up as they approached, her eyes a pale blue, cloudy but alert. "You brought me a suit today," she chuckled hoarsely. "What's the occasion?" "This is Adrienne. Her daughter might have come through here. Name's Sophie, 8 years old, brown hair, loves to draw." Marlene blinked slowly, then pulled something from beneath her blankets, a crumpled napkin with a drawing on it. A girl sitting on a swingback, turned hair blowing sideways. Adrienne's breath caught. "That's Sophie's style. She's been here." She was scared, Marlene said, voice soft as paper. But not the kind of scared that runs from strangers. The kind that's been waiting too long for someone to come looking. Adrienne swallowed hard. "Did she say anything?" She asked if people can be invisible even when they're loved. "I told her sometimes love is blind, especially when it forgets how to stop and sit still." Adrienne lowered herself to the ground beside Marlene. For the first time, the concrete didn't feel cold. It felt real. "Do you know where she went?" Marlene nodded toward a bus stop nearby. "Said she met someone kind. A woman who talks to pigeons and gives out peanut butter crackers. They left together maybe a day or two ago." Graham leaned in. "Did you catch a name?" "She just called her Miss Patsy. Has a cart with a little rainbow flag and a wind chime that never stops ringing." Adrienne gripped Graham's sleeve. "We have to find her." "We will," he said. But something in his voice sounded heavier now, like he knew the real search was just beginning. That night they drove in silence again, but this time it was companionable. Graham pulled into a drive-thru, ordered fries and 2 milkshakes. Adrienne looked puzzled. "This doesn't feel like detective work. It's not." "It's childhood," he said, handing her the chocolate shake. Sophie's favorite Adrienne looked down, then nodded. "I forgot about that." She didn't. They sat in the car, parked by a quiet overlook. The city sprawled below them like a sea of stories. Graham sipped his shake. "You know," he said, "when Lily lost her first tooth, she refused to put it under her pillow. Said the tooth fairy shouldn't have to climb all the way upstairs for one little thing." Adrienne smiled unexpectedly. "So, what did you do?" "I slept on the couch. Put the tooth on the coffee table. Fairy found it just fine." She laughed, the first real sound of warmth from her since they met. "You're a good dad." "I'm trying," he said. "That's all any of us can do. But kids, they don't remember perfect. They remember present." Adrienne's laughter faded into thought. "I don't think Sophie ever got either." Graham turned toward her. "Then, let's make sure the next time she does, it's from you." Later that night, Adrienne sat on the edge of her bed, Sophie's sketch pad in her lap. She ran her fingers over a half-finished drawing of 2 hands, one small, one adult, reaching for each other across a river. Below it, Sophie had written in pencil, "I'm not lost. I'm waiting." Adrienne clutched the pad to her chest, tears finally falling not because of fear, but because she now understood what she had missed all along. Her daughter didn't want to be rescued. She wanted to be found. The sun hadn't risen yet, but Graham's garage was already awake. Maps scattered across the table, red pins dotting transit stops and shelters. On the wall, Sophie's drawing sat beside real photographs, a girl's inner world trying to speak into the outer one. Graham moved through the room with quiet precision, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug. Adrienne sat nearby, hair tied back, sleeves rolled up. Gone was the designer coat. She looked softer, still sharp but less guarded. She traced a bus route with her fingertip. "If this Miss Patsy was seen near the underpass," she said, "and we assume she's on foot or public transit. She'll stay close to places where no one asks questions." Graham finished. "Church basements, abandoned lots, community kitchens." "Exactly." He paused. "You've done this before, no. But I've built a company. I know how to think like a pattern." She looked at him. "And I've learned to read ghosts, too." He smiled just faintly. "You're learning fast." Lily peeked in from the hallway barefoot and sleepy-eyed. She clutched her favorite plush rabbit ears worn smooth by time. "Is she still missing?" she asked softly. Adrienne knelt beside her. Yes, sweetheart. But we're getting closer. Lily studied her as only a child could, not for lies but for truths you were too afraid to say out loud. Did Sophie run away because she was mad? Adrian hesitated. No, not mad, just lonely. Lily nodded. Sometimes when I feel lonely, I draw myself into pictures with people I miss. She padded over to Sophie's sketchpad, flipping to the page with the two hands reaching across a river. I think she wants someone to cross that river. Graham crouched beside them. What would you do, Lily? She didn't even blink. I'd swim. By late morning, they had narrowed down a list of locations: 2 abandoned schools, a soup kitchen downtown, and a church outreach in the West District. They'd agreed to split up, cover more ground. But as Adrienne reached for her coat, Graham stopped her. Take Lily with you. Adrienne blinked. Me? She's been wanting to spend time with you since you showed up. Says you look like the kind of woman who keeps her promises. Adrienne's lips curled, unsure if it was a compliment or a challenge. I don't know how to talk to kids, she confessed. Then listen instead. That's where I started. They drove in silence for a while, Lily pressing her face to the window, watching the city scroll by. Do you miss her? Lily asked. Adrienne didn't answer right away. I miss who she was before she stopped talking to me. Maybe she didn't stop, Lily replied. Maybe you stopped hearing. Adrienne gripped the steering wheel tighter. The child wasn't accusing, she was observing. What do you do when someone you love hides from you? Lily shrugged. I leave them a note. Sometimes people need time to be found. They arrived at the church. It was small, red-bricked with ivy curling around the doorway and a faded sign. All are welcome here. Inside, volunteers moved quietly, packing bags of food, folding clothes. No one looked twice at Adrienne's heels or Lily's bunny. An older woman in a lavender apron approached them. Looking for someone, Adrienne showed her a photo. My daughter, Sophie. She may have passed through here with a woman named Miss Patsy. The woman frowned thoughtfully. Patsy comes by on Wednesdays with extra crackers and old folk songs. She's harmless, a little odd, but kind. Has she been here this week? Yesterday, just before closing. Had a girl with her. Quiet, carried a sketch pad. Adrienne's heart stuttered. Did she say where they were going? The woman shook her head. But Patsy mentioned the garden. Said she knew a place the pigeons still respected. No idea what that meant. Lily tugged on Adrienne's coat. I know what that means. Adrienne knelt. You do? There's a spot near the train yard with lots of pigeons and flowers. It's not a real garden, but it smells nice. Me and Dad call it the Wild Patch. Adrienne looked at the volunteer. Could that be it? The woman smiled. Child's got a better compass than most grown men. They found the Wild Patch just past the edge of the rail yard where broken train cars rusted in silence and nature was slowly winning the fight. Flowers bloomed between the cracks. Wind chimes hung from a bent lamppost. A shopping cart with a rainbow flag stood beside a stone bench. And sitting on that bench feeding crackers to a girl curled beside her was Patsy. Sophie. Adrienne froze. Every cell in her body wanted to run, to shout, to sweep her daughter into her arms, but something held her still. A quiet recognition. This moment belonged to Sophie. Graham had joined them silently from the other side of the path. He held up a hand. Wait. Sophie was drawing. A bird, with broken wings perched on a rooftop, still singing. Patsy whispered something in her ear, then stood and began to hum a lullaby. Sophie didn't look up, but her hand slowed. Then without warning, she turned and saw her mother. Their eyes locked. Neither moved. Lily reached for Adrienne's hand and whispered, Now swim. Adrienne stepped forward. No speeches, no apologies, just presence. She knelt inches from the bench. Hi, sweetheart. Sophie clutched her sketchpad tighter. I didn't come to take you. I came to be with you, however long it takes. Sophie's lip trembled. Her voice, barely more than breath, broke the stillness. You didn't see me before." Adrian's eyes filled. "I see you now. I see all of you. And I'm so sorry it took this long." Silence. Then the tiniest nod. And Sophie slid across the bench, just enough for her mother to sit beside her. Not to hold, not to fix, just to be. The air smelled of wild mint and rust. Sophie sat on the bench beside her mother's knees, drawn to her chest sketchpad balanced delicately on her lap. The silence between them wasn't hostile, it was reverent. A silence that said, "Don't break this. Let it be." Adrienne didn't speak. She didn't reach out. She simply sat, hands folded in her lap, grounding herself in the moment. Sophie glanced sideways. "You brought Lily." Adrienne nodded. "She wanted to come." Sophie's voice was barely audible. "She's nice. She listens without asking too many questions." Adrienne smiled gently. "She gets that from her dad." Sophie looked down at her page. "Are you mad at me?" Adrienne shook her head. "I was scared. Still am. But mad. No, I'm just trying to learn how to be here the right way." Sophie's pencil moved in slow, looping strokes. "You were always there, but not really there." Adrienne swallowed. The words hit with precision, not meant to wound, but to wake. "I know," she whispered. "I was always busy filling our life with everything I thought you'd need, but I forgot the one thing you needed most." Sophie looked up. What Adrienne's eyes softened. Me. From a distance, Graham watched the scene unfold. He stood near the lamppost, arms crossed loosely, Lily beside him, holding her sketchpad. "She's talking," Lily said. "She is." Graham nodded. "Sometimes you just need to let silence do the talking first." Lily glanced up. "Do you think Sophie will come home?" Graham crouched beside her. "I think she never left home. I think she just needed to find a way back to it." Lily blinked slowly. "You're going to help them, right? That's the plan. And after that—" He paused. "After that, we go back to our little life. Our coffee, our cartoons, our bad pancakes on Sundays." Lily smiled, then tugged on his sleeve. "Can we bring them bad pancakes, too?" Graham chuckled. "If they're brave enough." Back on the bench, Sophie handed her sketchpad to Adrienne. "I drew this last night," she said. The page showed a bridge, not perfect, slightly crooked, connecting two sides of a broken landscape. On one end stood a small girl, and on the other, a tall figure kneeling with open arms. "You built that," Sophie said softly, "when you sat down." Adrienne bit her lip to keep it from trembling. "Then I'll sit here as long as you need." A pause. Then Sophie leaned sideways, not fully, not completely, but just enough for her shoulder to rest against Adrienne's arm. It wasn't a hug, it was something deeper. Permission. Later that evening, back at Graham's home, the warmth of the small space wrapped around them like a soft blanket. The kitchen buzzed with the quiet rhythm of two families overlapping, uncertain but not uncomfortable. Lily showed Sophie her bookshelf. "That one's about a dog who thinks he's a detective. He's terrible at it, but really brave." Sophie cracked a shy smile. "I like brave dogs." From across the room, Adrienne watched the girls. Something inside her ached not from loss but from the unfamiliar shape of joy. Graham poured coffee into two mismatched mugs and handed one to her. "This place isn't fancy," he said, "but it's got a lot of heart." Adrienne took a sip. "It's warm. Not just the coffee. Everything." Graham leaned against the counter. "You're doing good, you know." She looked at him. "I don't feel like it." "Yeah, well, he said eyes kind feelings lie sometimes. Progress doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it just looks like a kid leaning into you for the first time in months." Adrienne nodded slowly. "How do you do it? Do what? Make it look so effortless." He chuckled. "Effortless Adrienne. I spend half my nights wondering if I've completely messed Lily up already. But I show up. I burn pancakes. I sit on floors and listen to stories that don't make sense. That's the job. I've spent most of my life building empires, she said quietly. But I never built this. He glanced at her. Then maybe this is the part you start. Later, Sophie sat curled on the couch sketchpad in hand, Lily beside her painting over watercolor skies. Adrienne walked over and knelt beside her daughter. "Can I stay with you tonight?" she asked. Sophie looked up. Like a sleepover, Adrienne smiled. Exactly like a sleepover. "I even brought your favorite pajamas." Sophie blinked. "The ones with the stars, I kept them," Adrienne said. "Even when you stopped wearing them. I hoped. Maybe one day." Sophie reached for the bag and pulled them out, pressing them to her cheek. "I miss the stars," she whispered. Adrienne blinked fast. I did too. That night, with the lights low and the quiet humming of a city far beyond the walls, Adrienne lay beside Sophie, listening to her breathing soften into sleep. She looked at the ceiling, her arm curled gently around her daughter's back. In the stillness, her heart whispered a promise. No more building towers. Only bridges. Only this. From the hallway, Graham paused by the door, watching for a moment. He didn't enter. He didn't need to. Some moments are meant to be whole, untouched. He turned and walked back toward the kitchen. A bridge had been built, and tomorrow they would start crossing it one honest step at a time. Morning poured through Graham's windows in long golden strands, softening the scars on old wood and warming the corners of the house. Sophie and Lily sat cross-legged on the rug, playing a quiet game with dominoes, their laughter like fragile wind chimes, tentative but unmistakably real. Adrienne stood at the kitchen counter, still in borrowed sweatpants, holding a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. She wasn't watching the girls. She was watching Graham. He moved with casual grace, rinsing dishes, humming a half-remembered tune. He didn't know she was studying him the way his shoulders carried weight without buckling, the way he made space without demanding thanks. There was something in his steadiness that unsettled her, because it made her realize how long she'd been bracing against the world. "You look like you're trying to solve an equation," he said, not turning around. She blinked. "I'm trying to understand how you make this look so easy." "It's not," he replied, handing her a warm towel, "but I gave up chasing perfection the day Lily threw up on my briefcase." Adrienne half laughed. "You had a briefcase, I used to have a whole life. Partner at a firm, conference calls, suits that didn't smell like maple syrup. What happened?" Graham leaned against the counter towel over his shoulder. "My wife. Brain aneurysm. One minute we were arguing about the laundry, the next she was gone. No warning. Just gone." The room stilled. "I'm so sorry," Adrienne said quietly. "Don't be," he replied. She loved big, laughed loud. She'd hate the way I grieve, all quiet and pragmatic. But Lily, she needed someone to stay soft. So I tried. Adrienne sipped her coffee, then looked up. "I didn't grieve when my mother died. Not properly. I scheduled a board meeting the next morning." Graham said nothing. I think Sophie noticed. I think that's when she started drawing rivers. Later that day, Sophie and Lily took a walk to the park down the street. Adrienne sat alone on the back porch, watching a breeze carry dried leaves across the steps. Graham joined her, handing her a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" she asked. "A letter Sophie wrote. Marlene, the woman from the underpass, said she was too scared to send it. Said maybe one day you'd be ready to read it." Adrienne unfolded the page. The handwriting was messy, uncertain. "Dear Mom, if I ran away, it's not because I hate you. It's because I missed you so much I forgot how to wait. I don't want toys or trips. I want your eyes. I want to say something and not have to repeat it because you were on your phone. I want you to sit with me, not next to me, but with me. I don't need a perfect mom, just one who notices when I'm drowning in silence. Love, Sophie." Adrienne's chest tightened. She pressed the letter to her heart like it might dissolve the ache inside her ribs. "She thought she was too much," she whispered. "No," Graham said gently. "She thought she was too invisible." Adrienne's voice cracked. I thought I was doing it all for her. The company, the estate, planning the college fund. And what good is a future? Graham said softly. If she doesn't feel seen in the present. Adrian looked at him, eyes glistening. Do you think I can fix this? I think Graham said you already started to. When you stopped speaking from your job title and started speaking from your heart. That evening, Adrian asked Sophie to go for a walk. Just the two of them. No phones, no agenda. They walked along the river path behind Graham's house, the golden hour painting the water in blush and bronze. Sophie skipped a stone. I like it here, she said. It's peaceful, Adrian agreed. It's not quiet like our penthouse. Sophie added, it's quiet in a way that doesn't feel lonely. Adrian felt that one hit deep. I want to know what I missed, she said gently. Will you help me remember you? Sophie looked up. Even the parts where I was mad at you. Especially those, Adrian said. Those are the ones I need the most. They sat on a fallen log. Sophie pulled out her sketchpad and turned to a page she hadn't shown anyone. It was a drawing of Adrienne, not in a suit, not holding a phone, but sitting on a floor, hair undone, eyes closed, hugging a child. This is what I dreamed about when I couldn't sleep, Sophie whispered. Adrienne reached out and touched the corner of the page. Then let's make it real. Sophie nodded, and for the first time she reached for her mother's arms, open heart unguarded. Adrienne held her tight, no longer afraid to be soft. Back at the house, Graham sat at the table sorting through old case files folders of runaways, troubled teen systems that failed. Adrienne entered quietly. I want to do more, she said. He looked up. More. Not just for Sophie. For kids like her. For kids like the ones in those folders. Graham studied her. You want to start something, I want to restore something, Adrian said. Hope. Visibility. A place where silence doesn't mean surrender. Graham set his papers down. That's not a press release. That's a mission. I don't want to just be a CEO anymore, she said. I want to be present for Sophie and maybe for others who never had that chance. He smiled. Welcome to the real work. That night, as stars blinked into place overhead, Sophie and Lily camped out in the living room. Pillow forts, fairy lights, and whispered secrets about dreams and dogs and brave girls. In the hallway, Adrian stood with Graham. I never knew how broken I was, she said. You weren't broken, he replied. You were just wearing too much armor. She looked up. And what about you? What are you hiding behind? He thought for a long moment. Maybe the idea that helping others means I never have to ask for help myself. Adrian touched his arm. Then maybe it's time we both let someone in. He didn't move. Just looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time she didn't feel judged. She felt seen. The night air was still wrapped in that comforting hush that only comes when children sleep and the world finally exhales. Outside Graham's house, the porch light buzzed gently, casting long shadows across the wooden floorboards. Adrian stood at the threshold of the living room, watching Sophie and Lily sleep in their tangled pillow fort. Sophie's hand rested protectively over Lily's shoulder. A soft smile played on Adrian's lips, the kind that only comes when you realize a part of your world has been quietly healing without you noticing. Graham entered the room behind her carrying a folded blanket. She doesn't grip the blanket anymore when she sleeps, Adrian said softly. She used to curl her fists so tight like she was bracing for something, even in her dreams. She's not bracing. Now, Graham replied, gently draping the blanket over the girls. Adrian turned to face him. Why does your house feel like a place people can breathe again? He hesitated, then said with a wry smile, probably because it's held together by coffee duct tape and a ridiculous amount of love. They laughed quietly, the kind of laughter that doesn't ask for attention. It just wants to belong. Later that night, Adrian followed Graham out to the backyard. The stars hung low above them, wide and watchful. Graham sat on a beat-up lawn chair and gestured for her to take the one beside him. They sat in silence for a while. Then Adrian asked, Do you ever get tired of being the strong one? Graham looked up at the sky. Every day. And yet, you never crumble. He gave her a long, searching glance. You want to know a secret? She nodded. He leaned forward. I did crumble. I just did it in the dark when no one was looking. After Cass died, I put Lily to bed one night and I cried so hard into a dish towel I nearly bit through it. I couldn't remember how to be a person who didn't ache. Adrian's throat tightened. Why didn't you tell anyone? I didn't know how, he said. And honestly, I thought people expected me to be okay, to hold it together. So I did. Adrian's voice softened. And now I know better, he said. Now I know that being strong sometimes means letting someone see you fall apart. She studied him, the lines at the corner of his eyes, the wear in his voice, the deep reservoir of pain he carried like a lantern. I wish someone had told me that sooner, she whispered. Graham stood, walked to the edge of the yard, then turned back. You want to see something I haven't shown anyone in years. Adrian followed him to the garage. It wasn't just a workspace, it was a sanctuary. A mix of old tools, crayon drawings, and one large covered object in the corner. Graham pulled back the tarp. It was a half-built wooden bench, hand-carved, delicate but strong. Embedded into the wood were phrases burned in by a branding iron. You are not forgotten. This space is yours. Sit. Rest. Be. Adrian ran her fingers across the grain. You made this for a community garden Cass wanted to build, for kids who didn't have safe homes. I couldn't finish it after she passed. She would have loved it, Adrian said. He nodded. Sometimes I sit in here and talk to her. Not out loud, just in my head, like she's sitting right there judging my saw angles. Adrian smiled. That's love, isn't it, when someone still lives in the decisions you make? There was a pause. Then he said quietly, You don't have to go back to the hotel. Adrian looked at him. He added quickly, I mean, you can. Obviously. But if you and Sophie want to stay just until things feel settled, the space is yours. Adrian's eyes met his. You're sure I'm sure? She nodded. Then, we'd like that. Graham reached into the workbench drawer and pulled out a fresh branding iron. He handed it to her. There's room for one more message, he said. What would you add? Adrian thought for a long moment. Then, with steady hands, she pressed the hot metal into the wood. When she lifted it, the words glowed red before settling into the grain. You are safe here. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the small kitchen. The smell of cinnamon toast filled the air. Sophie set the table while Lily practiced pouring orange juice like a bartender. Adrian stirred oatmeal on the stove, barefoot, humming. Graham entered, rubbing his eyes. This is dangerous. You're setting a precedent. Adrian grinned. Don't get used to it. I burn things before I impress anyone. He walked over to the table, saw the bench drawing Sophie had done. She drew your bench, Adrian said. Graham looked closer. Sophie had added something, two figures sitting side by side on the bench, not facing forward but turned toward each other. One hand rested on the other's shoulder. She's watching us, Adrian said quietly. She sees more than we think. Graham nodded. Kids always do. They stood there shoulder to shoulder watching the image, and without saying it out loud, both knew something was changing. Not finished, not fixed, but becoming. It started with a phone call. Not the kind that rings with urgency, but the kind that arrives quietly vibrating on a countertop, trembling with the weight of something you can't yet name. Adrienne stared at the screen. Jeffrey Langston, General Counsel. She didn't answer. Not yet. Outside, the backyard buzzed with the soft sounds of a weekend morning. Sophie and Lily making chalk drawings on the pavement. Graham raking leaves one-handed while sipping coffee from a chipped mug. Peace. That fragile golden peace. She stepped onto the porch. You okay? Graham asked, reading her face like a book he didn't want to see hurt again. No, she said honestly. But I think I'm about to find out how not okay. Back inside, she called back. Jeffrey's voice came through like cold wind under a door. "Adrienne, we have a situation." Her body stiffened. What kind of situation? Someone leaked internal financial documents to the press. Emails, strategy memos, even correspondence from the board, all pointing to the fact that you've been off-grid for almost a month while the company prepares for a regulatory audit. Adrienne closed her eyes. How bad is it? Bad enough that they've opened an inquiry into your capacity to lead. There's talk of freezing your shares. The board is convening an emergency session Monday morning. And Sophie A. Pause. Your ex-husband has filed for emergency custody. Claims you've endangered her well-being by harboring her in an unstable environment and exposing her to individuals with criminal records. Adrienne felt the words hit her like hailstones. "This is retaliation," she whispered. "It's politics," Jeffrey said. "You vanished from the map, Adrienne. You gave them the silence they needed to write their own story." That evening, Graham found her sitting alone in his workshop staring at the bench they'd carved together. Her hands were clenched in her lap. He said nothing at first, just sat beside her. "It's all crashing down," Adrienne murmured. "Everything I built." "You didn't build it alone," Graham said, "and you're not falling alone." She looked at him, eyes glassy. "I can't lose her again. I can't go back to being that cold, efficient woman people obey but never love." He took a breath. "Then fight like someone who knows what love looks like now." She exhaled, long and trembling. "They think you're a threat, a janitor, a father with no pedigree." He met her gaze without blinking. "They're not wrong. I don't have titles, or degrees, or publicists. What I have is truth, and if they try to paint me as dangerous, fine. I've survived worse. But you need to decide something, Adrienne. What are you going to let them shame you back into a cage you finally crawled out of?" The next morning, the house felt different. Charged, like something sacred had been broken, not destroyed, but exposed to the light. Sophie sensed it. Children always do. "Are you going away again?" she asked Adrienne quietly over breakfast. Adrienne knelt beside her. "No, sweetheart, but I might have to be very loud for a little while, to protect the quiet we've built here." Sophie thought for a moment. "Can I help?" Adrienne blinked back tears. "You already are." Graham entered holding an envelope. "It's from my pro bono attorney friend," he said. "She took a look at your case and says you've got more leverage than you think. Turns out the unstable environment you're accused of is actually statistically safer than most private academies." Adrienne managed a shaky smile. God bless data. Later that afternoon, Adrienne stood in the garage with Graham watching him sort through old files, police reports, runaway cases, social worker notes. "You kept them all?" she asked. "Every name he said. Because I promised myself that no child I crossed paths with would ever disappear twice." She studied his face. "You never told me why you quit your job." Graham hesitated, then picked up a folder. "Case number 1086, he said. Her name was Maya. 14. I found her living behind a laundromat. She'd been through hell. I got her into temporary housing, helped her enroll in school. She smiled once, just once, and it felt like everything was worth it." He paused. A week later, she was found dead. Overdose. The system delayed her placement by 2 days. And in those 2 days, the world got to her. Adrienne's throat clenched. "I blamed myself," Graham continued. "Still do sometimes. So I quit. But I didn't stop. I just redirected." She looked at him. "You don't save everyone." "No," he said, voice low. "But sometimes you save one. And maybe that's enough." That evening, Adrienne typed something into her phone. A social post. A public letter. To the board, the press, and the people watching this unfold like a scandal. "Yes, I left. I left the noise, the meetings, the corner office because my daughter needed me. Not my money. Not my business card. Me. And in that quiet, I found something more valuable than reputation. I found love, vulnerability, and a man who taught me that strength is not measured by how loud you speak, but by how gently you stay. She hit post. It spread like wildfire, not just for the scandal, but for the truth of it. As the sun set, Graham stepped onto the porch where Adrian stood watching the sky bleed into night. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "For the first time in a long time. I'm not afraid of being seen." He reached for her hand. Then let them look. Let them see the woman who didn't run from the storm but stood still and became it. They stood side by side as the stars blinked on quiet, resolute, and unshakably together. The internet didn't just react, it exploded. Adrian's letter went viral in under 8 hours. Thousands of comments, retweets, think pieces. Some called her reckless. Others called her a hero. But the loudest voices, the ones that mattered, were from people who had needed someone to say exactly what she'd said. "I see myself in her. She just described my mother in 3 sentences. This isn't weakness, this is revolutionary love." At the kitchen table, Adrian sat with a quiet storm brewing in her chest. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing, but she ignored it. She didn't need validation. She needed clarity. Sophie peeked around the corner. "Mom." Adrian turned. "Hey, baby." "I drew something," Sophie said, walking over. She handed Adrian a sketch, a woman with a cape standing in front of a storm holding a little girl's hand. The caption read, "My mom doesn't run anymore." Adrian's breath caught. "Did you draw this today?" Sophie nodded. "You said we're not afraid to be loud." Adrienne wrapped her arms around her daughter, holding her like a lifeline. "You were the reason I found my voice, Sophie. You're my compass." Sophie whispered, "Then promise you won't get quiet again." Adrienne closed her eyes. "I promise." By midday, a call came from Morning Rise Today, one of the biggest national news networks. They wanted Adrian live in studio. The anchor called her story a rare collision between corporate power and emotional truth. "I'm not a symbol," Adrian told Graham later, pacing the porch. "I don't want this to be about brand redemption." "Then don't speak like a brand," he said gently. "Speak like Sophie's mother, like Lily's safe place, like the woman who carved you are safe here into wood when no one was watching." She paused. "Will you come with me?" He hesitated. "It's your moment." "I don't want a moment," she said. "I want a life that includes this." At the studio, the green room was tense. A producer reviewed talking points, suggested polished phrases, PR-friendly pivots. Adrienne politely nodded, then folded the cue cards and set them aside. When the cameras rolled, the anchor smiled. "Adrian Kessler, your open letter sparked a national conversation. Some are calling it a brave act of vulnerability. Others say you abandoned your post. What do you say to that?" Adrian looked directly into the lens. "I say I finally stopped performing." She held up Sophie's drawing. "This is who I want to be. Not the CEO who owns the room. The mother who shows up in it. The woman who doesn't hide behind power when pain shows up. We don't need more leaders who sound perfect. We need leaders who remember what it's like to be human." The silence in the studio was heavy, sacred. The anchor, blinking fast, whispered, "Thank you." That night back home, Graham found Adrian in the backyard, barefoot in the grass, looking up at the stars. She turned when she heard him. "You didn't watch the interview?" "I didn't have to," he said. "I've seen you live it." She walked toward him. "I was terrified. And you still stood." She reached for his hand. "You're part of that." He nodded, then swallowed hard. "There's something I haven't told you," he said. She stilled. "I got a call. A nonprofit that helps displaced teens saw your interview. They offered me a position to run a new pilot program. Full-time, permanent, in Chicago." Adrian's heart sank and rose at the same time. "That's amazing," she said, forcing the words. "I didn't say yes." "Why not because of this?" he said, motioning between them. because for the first time in years, I'm not just needed. I'm known, and I don't want to walk away from that." Adrian stepped closer. "Then don't." He looked at her. "Are you asking me to stay?" She took a long breath. "No, I'm asking you to choose not out of obligation or fear, but out of whatever this is becoming between us." He smiled, that quiet, steady smile that didn't need to be flashy to be unforgettable. "Then I choose us," he said. Later that week, the emergency board meeting convened. Adrienne walked in alone. No lawyers, no entourage. Just truth. They didn't expect her to be so calm. One member leaned forward. "Ms. Kessler, we've reviewed the footage, the fallout, and the impact on shareholder trust. While we commend your transparency, we must ask, where do you see your place here now?" Adrian stood. "I see myself redefining what leadership looks like. I'm not here to defend a job title. I'm here to build a company that doesn't demand people lose their soul to keep their seat at the table." There was a long silence. Then unexpectedly an older board member spoke. "My daughter sent me your interview. Said it was the first time she believed a CEO knew what a parent's heart looked like. That matters." Another nodded. "You haven't weakened the brand. You humanized it." The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. Adrienne kept her position not in spite of her vulnerability, but because of it. That night, she and Graham sat on the back porch again, watching the fireflies. "You think people can really change?" she asked. He looked at her. "I think the right kind of love doesn't just change us," he said. "It restores us, bit by bit, without force, just invitation." She rested her head on his shoulder, and in that stillness there was no applause, no spotlight, just two people who had learned how to stay. The first sign was the smoke, thin gray tendrils curling into the dusk like a warning whispered too late. Lily saw it first from her bedroom window. "Daddy," she shouted, "there's fire." At the end of the street, Graham bolted outside. A crowd had gathered. Sirens wailed in the distance. The blaze came from the old community center 4 blocks away, the one that housed outreach programs for teens, the same one Graham had once volunteered at, and where the pilot program he'd been offered had just started orientation. He turned back inside. "Adrienne, I need to go. I'm coming with you," she said, grabbing her coat. "No, stay with the girls." But she was already slipping on her boots. When they arrived, the air reeked of burning rubber and scorched memories. Firefighters battled the flames, but the building was gutted. Graham sprinted toward a woman standing with a clipboard coughing into her sleeve. "Where's Elijah?" "The kids," he demanded. "They evacuated." She gasped. "But Elijah—" He ran back in, said someone was still inside. Graham didn't wait. He ran. Adrienne grabbed his arm. Don't do this." He turned eyes blazing with the kind of purpose that doesn't ask permission. "He saved me once. Now it's my turn." And before she could stop him, he vanished into the smoke. Inside, the world was orange and black. Heat throbbed in the walls. Graham moved by memory, dodging falling beams, calling Elijah's name. Then he heard it faint behind a metal door. He kicked it in. Elijah was curled around a boy no older than 10, shielding him with his body. "You came back," Elijah coughed. "Of course I did." Graham pulled the boy into his arms. "We go now." They stumbled toward the exit lungs, screaming. A final beam cracked and came crashing down but missed them by inches. As they burst through the door into fresh air, the crowd roared. Paramedics rushed in. Graham dropped to his knees, coughing, shaking. Adrienne was beside him in seconds. "You idiot," she choked. "You beautiful, reckless idiot." He coughed a laugh. "You're crying again. Only because you made me believe people like you exist." Later at the hospital, Graham lay on a gurney, an oxygen mask strapped to his face. Lily sat beside him, her small hand wrapped tightly around his fingers. "You're not allowed to be that brave ever again," she said solemnly. He pulled off the mask just long enough to whisper, "Deal." Adrienne sat with them, her hand never leaving his chest, as if she was anchoring him back to this world. I saw you run into fire for someone, she whispered that night when he was stable and the girls were asleep. I saw you stay, he replied. And then finally gently he reached for her hand. I love you, Adrienne. She didn't answer with words. She leaned in, kissed his forehead, and stayed. In the days that followed, the fire made headlines. Not just because of the damage, but because of the response. Photos of Graham carrying the boy out of the inferno went viral. News outlets called him the janitor who ran into fire. But to the kids who lived in those programs, he was just Mr. Graham, the man who never stopped showing up. Adrienne used her platform to raise funds for rebuilding. Within 48 hours, the fundraiser surpassed its goal. But the most powerful moment came at the town hall meeting when the city council offered her a choice: rebuild the center with her name on the project or step aside and let the community lead. She stood at the microphone, eyes scanning the crowd. I didn't come here to build a monument to myself, she said. I came to rebuild trust. So I'm not putting my name on the wall. I'm putting my hands in the soil. I'm staying. And I'm standing beside the people who've already been doing this work long before I showed up. The room erupted in applause. Graham watched from the back, holding Lily and Sophie on either side of him. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like someone who had walked away from his purpose. He felt like someone who had finally come home to it. Later that night, Adrienne found Graham on the porch again. Same wooden bench, same stars above. You think it's possible to feel both exhausted and full, she asked. He smiled. Parenting, loving, and being a decent human. That's basically the recipe. She sat beside him. I was scared, you know, she said. That night, when I saw you disappear into that fire. I know. I thought, please don't take away the one man who didn't ask me to shrink to be loved. He looked at her. I would have come back, even if I had to crawl. She exhaled a shaky breath. I never thought I'd find a man who saved people, not because he wanted praise, but because he couldn't imagine doing anything else. He took her hand again. You didn't find me, he said. You saw me. 3 months later, the house looked different. Not bigger, not flashier, just fuller. The porch now had flower pots, each one painted by Lily and Sophie. The kitchen had 2 lunchboxes on the counter every morning, and the calendar had hand-drawn hearts circling random Wednesday's family game night. There was laughter in the walls. There were socks left on the stairs and little arguments about who used the last of the peanut butter. And somewhere in the background of it all, the quiet hum of something sacred, a life being lived. Adrienne stood at the kitchen sink one early evening, the sun drenching everything in gold. She watched as Graham helped the girls build a treehouse in the backyard. You're doing it wrong, Lily shouted with mock authority. No, I'm doing it Dad style, which means probably wrong, but built with love. Graham shot back, making them all laugh. Adrienne smiled to herself. She had never imagined this kind of life. Not really. Her dreams had always involved conference rooms, quarterly goals, and the occasional spa weekend for balance. But this was joy in motion, ordinary magic. She didn't feel like she had lost herself. She felt like she had found the part that was always missing. That weekend, they invited neighbors and local volunteers over for a small celebration. The new community center had finished construction 2 weeks ahead of schedule. As people filtered into the backyard with baked goods and hand-painted thank you signs, Graham stood near the grill flipping burgers and greeting old friends with that same quiet, disarming charm. One woman walked over clutching a worn journal. I don't think you remember me, she said. My name's Maria. I was in one of your outreach programs when I was 16. Graham squinted, then lit up. Maria Simmons. You used to write poetry in the margins of every handout. She laughed, teary-eyed. I'm teaching English now. I kept this. She held up the journal because you wrote something in the back before I left. You matter more than your scars. I didn't believe it then. I do now. Graham's voice was thick. Thank you for coming. You didn't just change my life, Maria said. You refused to let me believe I didn't have one. Inside, Adrienne was helping Sophie get into her little white dress. It was a casual affair, no pageantry, no stage. But Sophie insisted on looking like someone who belonged in a miracle. "Do you think people can stay happy forever?" Sophie asked suddenly. Adrian paused, smoothing the hem of the dress. "No," she said honestly, "but I think they can stay whole. And when people love each other right, they help each other put the pieces back when life gets messy." Sophie nodded like she already understood. As the sun began to dip, Graham took Adrian's hand and led her to the center of the yard. "I have something to say," he announced, clearing his throat. People quieted. Even the birds seemed to hush. He looked at Adrian. Not with spectacle, but with steady, earned affection. "I used to think love was about rescuing people, running into fire, being the first one to throw yourself into the storm." He paused. "But then I met a woman who didn't need saving. She needed seeing. And she let me be the man who stood beside her instead of in front of her." Adrian's eyes shimmered. "I don't have a ring yet," he said, chuckling softly, "but I have a life, and if you'll have it, it's yours." Adrian stepped forward, framed by 1,000 tiny fairy lights and 1,000 unspoken memories. "I don't need a ring, either," she said. "Just your hand, your presence, and your promise to keep showing up for them, for us, for you." He nodded. "Always." They didn't kiss like in the movies. They kissed like people who had been through the worst of it, and still chose each other anyway. As the guests clapped, Lily tugged on Sophie's sleeve. "Does this mean we're sisters for real?" Now Sophie grinned. "We've been sisters since the day you let me have the last cookie. This just makes it official." They laughed, spun in circles, and collapsed in the grass, two little girls wrapped in a love they didn't need to understand to trust. That night, after the last guest had gone, Adrian and Graham sat in the treehouse, legs dangling, listening to the cicadas hum. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You think this will last?" she asked quietly. "No," he said. "I think it'll change, grow, stretch, break a little, heal a little. But us, we'll last. How do you know? Because we didn't build this on convenience or fairy tales. We built it on fire and silence and the choice to stay." She closed her eyes, and for once no more words were needed. And that was the story of a man who didn't just help a mother find her daughter. He helped her find herself. If this story moved, made you reflect, or even just made you feel a little more hopeful about the world, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country. In the comments, we're building a beautiful community from all around the world. And if you believe in the power of love, resilience, and second chances, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next story that might touch your heart just like this one did. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and never stop believing in the quiet magic of everyday people. This has been your story. We're just honored to tell it.